When my husband told me his ex would be joining us for Christmas dinner, I almost dropped the wine glass. The stem slipped in my hand, and for a second, I wished it would just shatter so the noise could drown out what I'd just heard. He was standing at the counter, scrolling through his phone like he'd just told me the weather. "You heard me, right?" he said casually. "Sophie's coming home for the holidays. I invited her to dinner." I blinked, forcing a smile. "You invited her?" My voice cracked before I caught it. "Yeah," he said, not even looking up. "It's no big deal. She doesn't have family here anymore, and it's Christmas. Come on, you're not going to make this weird. No big deal." Those words echoed in my head, while I stirred the gravy that suddenly smelled like nothing. Sophie, the woman he used to love before me. The one he'd once said broke his heart and taught him what not to want. I tried to sound calm. "So, where will she stay?" He shrugged. "Here, of course." "The guest room?" That's when I finally looked up at him. His eyes were brighter than they'd been in months, the kind of light that used to be for me. And in that moment, I felt something colder than the December air outside. I forced a laugh, pretending to adjust the tablecloth. "Oh, the guest room. Perfect. I'll make sure it's spotless for your old flame." He sighed. "You're overreacting," he said, rubbing his temple. "She's family in a way. We've all moved on. Family." That word stung. I turned, meeting his eyes squarely. "Then I guess I'll play the gracious wife." My voice came out smooth, steady, so much calmer than I felt. He smiled faintly, like he believed me. Maybe he should have looked closer. The rest of the evening passed in silence. The Christmas lights twinkled above the fireplace, and I decorated the tree with hands that barely felt real. I'd always believed that love was built on trust, but as I placed the star on top, all I could think about was how easy it was for trust to turn into humiliation. That night, while he watched TV, I went upstairs to make the guest bed. Fresh sheets, new towels, the things a good hostess would do. I fluffed the pillows, folded the blanket, and stared at the space where she would sleep. In my house, under my roof, I could almost see it playing out. Her smile at the dinner table, her laugh echoing in my kitchen, the way he'd glance at her when he thought I wasn't looking. I told myself I wouldn't be the jealous wife. I told myself I was stronger than that. But inside, I was already unraveling. When I went back downstairs, he was still glued to his phone. I poured myself a glass of wine, watching the reflection of the Christmas tree in the window. "Are you excited to see her?" I asked softly. He looked surprised. "I mean, yeah, I guess. It's been years. We're adults, right?" "Adults. Sure. Adults who thought inviting an ex to Christmas dinner was normal." I nodded and took a slow sip, hiding the tremor in my hand. "Then I'll make sure it's a Christmas she won't forget." He laughed lightly, not catching the edge in my tone. "That's my girl." When we finally went to bed, he fell asleep instantly. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the conversation. I kept trying to convince myself it didn't mean anything. Maybe he was just being kind. Maybe Sophie really was just a friend. But deep down, something didn't fit. It wasn't just his words. It was the way he'd smiled when he said her name. The way his voice softened, almost nostalgic. I knew that tone. I used to be the one who brought it out of him. I turned over, trying to quiet my thoughts. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, but it wasn't mine lighting up. It was his. The screen glowed for just a second before fading again. I shouldn't have looked. I knew that, but something in me, the part that still wanted proof, reached for it. And there it was. One unread message. Short, direct, like a knife slipped between ribs. "Can't wait to be in your arms again." As my breath caught, my fingers went numb. He shifted in his sleep, murmuring something I couldn't hear. The phone slipped from my hand, landing softly on the carpet. I stared at him, at the man who'd promised me loyalty, who'd built a life with me, and realized the truth. Christmas hadn't even arrived yet, and somehow, it was already over. I sat there in the dark, listening to him breathe, and whispered to myself, "Then let's make this Christmas unforgettable. For both of you." Sophie arrived looking like the past he never stopped missing. From the window, I watched the snow swirl around her car as she stepped out, bundled in a red coat that matched the lipstick she used to wear when she was his. Her hair shimmered under the porch light, and before I could blink, he was already there, running out the door like a scene from an old movie. He hugged her too long, the kind of hug that said, "I remember you." I stayed behind the curtain, silent, smiling just enough to keep from screaming. He held her shoulders, said something that made her laugh, and for a split second, I saw him, my husband, become the man I didn't recognize anymore. Dinner was supposed to feel warm, festive, safe. Instead, it felt like trespassing on someone else's memories. The table gleamed with silverware and candlelight. I'd prepared everything perfectly. The roast, the wine, the centerpiece I'd spent an hour arranging. But the moment she sat down, the room tilted toward her. Sophie filled every silence. She talked about the trips they took, before life got complicated. She reached across the table, touching his arm when she laughed, leaning close as if she still had the right. Everyone else thought it was harmless nostalgia. I forced a smile each time someone said, "It's so nice you two stayed friends." Friends. I watched her fingers brush his sleeve again, and this time I didn't even taste my food. I was too busy memorizing every detail. Her perfume, her tone, the way she looked at him when she thought I wasn't watching. Then it happened. Their old song, the one from their college days, started playing on the radio in the background. A slow, lazy tune about holding on too long. He hummed along, softly, automatically, and she joined in. My fork froze midair. The air felt heavier. I saw my reflection in the wine glass, smiling politely as my pulse climbed higher with every note. After dinner, I pushed my chair back and placed my napkin neatly on the table. "Excuse me," I said lightly. "I'm feeling a little unwell." He looked up, concerned, but I waved him off. "It's just the wine, you stay." "Enjoy catching up." Sophie gave a sympathetic smile. "You poor thing." "Maybe lie down. We'll clean up here." I went upstairs, my stomach tight and burning, but I didn't rest. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, curiosity eating through my restraint. I found her social media easily. She hadn't changed her username since college. Her profile was full of winter photos and captions that read like confessions. Some chapters reopen when the timing feels right. Old love, new spark, and the most recent one, posted just an hour before dinner, back where I belong. The words stared back at me, sharp as glass. Downstairs, I heard their laughter, muffled but unmistakable. I opened the bedroom window for air. Snowflakes drifted in, cold against my face. I whispered to myself, observe quietly. Collect clues, maintain control. It was the only mantra keeping me from losing it. When I finally returned to the living room, the fire had died down. Sophie was sitting close beside him on the couch, scrolling through old photos on her phone. He smiled at one, an image of them on a summer pier, arms around each other, soaked in sunlight. He looked up when he noticed me. "Hey, you feeling better?" I smiled faintly. "Much," Sophie grinned. "We were just reminiscing. We've known each other since before the pretenses, right?" Her tone was playful, but it landed like a dart. I sat down, folding my hands in my lap. "Yes," I said softly, "but some pretenses keep families together." For a second, the room went silent. Her smile faltered just slightly. Then she laughed, that same melodic sound that used to haunt my insecurities. "Touché," he chuckled awkwardly as if to ease the tension. "You two are something else." Yes, I thought. We are. Later that night, after she'd gone to the guest room and he'd kissed my forehead goodnight, I lay awake again, eyes fixed on the ceiling, mind spinning like the snowstorm outside. I told myself I was imagining things. That jealousy was twisting everything into something it wasn't. But the more I tried to convince myself, the more I saw the truth hidden in their glances, their laughter, their ease. He hadn't just invited her to dinner. He'd invited the past back into our home, and it was settling in comfortably. The house was quiet when I finally got up. I wandered into the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. My reflection stared back, pale and tired, eyes rimmed red from holding back too much. As I reached for the towel, I noticed something in the drawer, something that didn't belong. A second toothbrush, pink, new. My heart stopped. I picked it up slowly, my fingers trembling. There was no mistake. It was hers. I'd seen that exact shade before, on her vanity, years ago, when I'd met her at a party long before I ever thought she'd become this. I stared at it, gripping the sink to steady myself. Then I heard it, the soft creak of floorboards outside the door, his footsteps. I quickly placed the toothbrush back, closed the drawer, and turned off the light. Sliding into bed beside him, I lay still, my heart pounding. He turned slightly, half asleep, murmuring her name. That was the moment I stopped wondering. Jealousy was no longer the problem. It was certainty. I saw them under the mistletoe, and it wasn't an accident. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine, the soft hum of carols blending with laughter from the living room. Candles flickered along the mantel, throwing golden light across the tinsel and ornaments I'd hung hours earlier. Everything looked perfect, except for the scene unfolding before me. Sophie stood close to him, too close. Her hand brushed his chest as she laughed at something only he could hear. Above them, the mistletoe hung like a cruel joke. He didn't move away. My throat tightened, but I smiled anyway, holding the tray of cookies like armor. "Caught you two under the mistletoe," I said brightly. She turned, her lipstick gleaming in the candlelight. "Oh, I didn't even notice. Liar." He grinned, rubbing the back of his neck. "Just tradition, right?" "Of course," I said softly, setting the tray down. "Traditions are important." The room filled with chatter again, but all I could hear was the echo of her laugh and the quiet collapse of something inside me. All evening, he dismissed my boundaries with a casual ease that made my stomach twist. When I asked him to help serve drinks, he invited Sophie to sit beside him instead. When I spoke, he interrupted with a joke they both found funny. It was as if I'd vanished, replaced by the shadow of their past. At one point, my sister leaned close and whispered, "He's acting like he's in love again." I swallowed hard. "I know." Later, I passed by the kitchen and heard Sophie's voice. Low, conspiratorial. "You told me she'd never notice," she said. I froze. The sound of those words hit harder than the winter wind outside. My pulse thudded in my ears. But instead of storming in, I straightened my dress and smiled. Let them think I was blind. Let them think I didn't see. That night I began collecting evidence. Not for him, but for me. Every glance, every whisper, every touch they thought went unseen. My phone became my witness, quietly recording moments that spoke louder than confessions ever would. At dinner, I played my part perfectly. Calm, kind, curious. "Sophie," I said, pouring her another glass of wine. "Tell me, what brings you back to our town?" She met my gaze, her smile sharp, maybe unfinished business. I held her eyes steady as stone. "Well," I said, "I hope you find what you're looking for." The tension beneath the table was electric, invisible but real. My husband laughed too loudly at nothing, his hand brushing hers again as if testing how far he could go before I broke. But I didn't break. Not this time. By the time the guests left, I'd shifted from humiliation to something colder. Control. Strategy. The clock struck 11 as I cleared the dishes, the faint scent of Sophie's perfume still clinging to the air. My husband sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone like always. I watched his reflection in the dark window, my heartbeat slowing into something deliberate. Then his phone lit up. A message flashed across the screen. Midnight. By the fireplace. The same fireplace where we'd once exchanged gifts and promises. This time I didn't cry. I just smiled. Because if midnight was what they wanted, I'd be waiting. I stayed awake at midnight, and what I saw burned hotter than the fire. The house was dark except for the soft glow of the Christmas tree. Its lights blinked lazily, red and gold reflections dancing across the ornaments. The fire crackled low in the fireplace, throwing shadows that seemed to breathe. Everyone was asleep. Everyone except me. I sat in the armchair farthest from the light, the one hidden behind the garland and the tree. My phone rested on my lap, camera ready, the tiny red light hidden beneath my palm. At first, I heard only the creak of the wooden floor and the wind pressing against the windows. Then came footsteps, soft, deliberate. Sophie entered first. Her perfume arrived before she did. That same cloying sweetness that had filled my dining room hours earlier. She wore a coat draped over her shoulders and a nervous smile that flickered like the firelight. Moments later, he appeared. My husband, still in the sweater I'd given him last Christmas. They stood close to the fireplace, voices low, as if afraid the walls might listen. He sighed. "You shouldn't have come." "You told me to," she whispered. He ran a hand through his hair. That was before I realized she's still awake sometimes. "She's fragile. I can't hurt her right now." Sophie stepped closer. "Then when?" "After the holidays?" The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. I clenched my phone tighter, afraid it would pick up the sound of my heartbeat. The fire popped behind them, sparks rising like tiny confessions. He reached for her hand. "You're the only one who ever really understood me." And there it was, the truth, spoken so gently, it almost sounded like love. Sophie leaned in, her voice a whisper. "Then leave her." My stomach twisted, but I didn't move. I couldn't. Every word was another match tossed into the flames. "I can't just—" he started, but she cut him off with a kiss. A soft sound, barely there, but enough to scorch the air between us. I felt my pulse hammer in my throat. The pain was raw, but beneath it, something colder began to rise. Not despair, not grief, determination. If this was the game they wanted to play, I would learn the rules and win. Their voices dropped again, drifting between crackles of fire and the faint hum of the clock striking 12. He pulled back first. "We can't do this here." Sophie's laugh was bitter. "We already did." He looked toward the stairs, and for a second I thought he'd seen me. But no, he just sighed, running a hand over his face. "Go home, Sophie." She hesitated. "You'll call?" He nodded. "Tomorrow." When she finally left, he stood by the fire for a long time, staring into it like it might hold his salvation. Then he turned off the lights and went upstairs. I waited until I heard the bedroom door click shut before I let myself breathe. The fire had burned low, embers glowing like secrets refusing to die. I reached for my phone, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from focus. I replayed the recording once, just enough to hear their voices again. His tone, her whisper. Proof carved into digital silence. Then I opened a new message and attached the file. No name. No warning. Just 5 words. "Merry Christmas. Secrets burned too." I hit send. Across the hall, his phone buzzed once, then again. The fire cracked loudly, and I smiled in the dark, the glow painting my face in gold and ash. Let the truth burn. He came down the stairs pale, clutching his phone like it might explode. Christmas morning light spilled through the curtains, painting the room in gold and frost. The smell of coffee and cinnamon rolls filled the air, but under it all lingered something sour. Fear. I was already in the kitchen, humming softly as I arranged gifts beneath the tree. When he appeared, his eyes darted everywhere but me. The phone trembled in his hand. "Merry Christmas," I said, smiling. He nodded, forcing a weak grin. "Yeah, Merry Christmas." His voice cracked on the words. Sophie arrived late. Her hair was messy, her smile too bright. She made excuses about a work emergency, her bag already packed and leaning by the door. When he looked at her, panic flickered behind his eyes. I served breakfast like nothing had changed. Bacon, eggs, the cranberry muffins he loved. The family gathered around, laughing, unwrapping small gifts. But between us, silence buzzed like static. Every time his phone buzzed, his hand flew to it. Every time Sophie's name came up in conversation, his jaw tightened. I watched him closely, how he tried to act normal, how the guilt sat heavy on his shoulders. At one point, I caught him under the table, deleting messages, scrolling frantically. "Everything okay?" I asked lightly, sipping my coffee. He froze. "Yeah, just cleaning up my inbox. Good habit," I said. "Some things are better deleted." He looked up sharply, eyes wide for a second before he forced a laugh. Sophie pushed her chair back, pretending to check her watch. "I'm so sorry, everyone. I really do have to run. On Christmas?" I said gently. She nodded, her voice thin. "My office. It's complicated, of course," I replied. "Merry Christmas, Sophie. Do drive safely." Our eyes met for a fraction of a second, hers full of shame, mine full of quiet certainty. After she left, he barely spoke. The color never returned to his face. He helped the kids open their presents, smiling in all the wrong places. His hands trembled as he unwrapped mine. It was a small box, neatly tied with a silver ribbon. He hesitated. "What's this?" "Just something I thought you'd appreciate," I said softly. "It's labeled Our Christmas Memories." He frowned, turning it over in his hands. A small USB drive gleamed inside, tucked into the velvet lining. He looked at me, confused. "You seem different today." I met his gaze calmly. "Christmas changes people." He forced another laugh, one that didn't reach his eyes. Right. The rest of the morning passed in slow motion, wrapping paper rustling, carols playing faintly in the background, the fire crackling behind us. But I could feel his mind racing, trapped in its own private panic. Later, when the family drifted off for naps and leftovers, he slipped away to his office. I followed quietly, stopping at the doorway. He sat at his desk, plugging the USB into his laptop. His hand hovered above the mouse, breathing shallow, lips parted. Then the screen lit up. For a moment, there was only the sound of the fire from the recording, soft, intimate. Then voices, his voice, hers, "You're the only one who ever really understood me." "Then leave her." He flinched like he'd been struck. The color drained completely from his face as he watched himself lean in toward her, saw his own hand reach across the frame, and over the sound of the crackling fire came my voice, calm and cold, from the shadows of that same night. "Merry Christmas. Secrets burn too." He froze. The glow of the screen flickered in his eyes like guilt set aflame. From the hallway, I smiled faintly and turned away. "Merry Christmas." Indeed. He confronted me that night, red-eyed, desperate, cornered. The Christmas lights still blinked weakly on the mantel, their reflection trembling against the window. Wrapping paper lay scattered on the floor, torn like the truth we'd been avoiding. The house was silent, except for his breathing, uneven, sharp. He stood in the doorway holding the USB drive. "What the hell was that, Emily?" His voice cracked, fury wrapped in fear. I didn't look up right away. I was gathering the last of the plates from the table, pretending to clean. "You tell me," I said quietly. He stepped closer, shaking his head. "You misunderstood." She kissed me. "That's all it was." I turned then, meeting his eyes. "At midnight? By the fireplace, after telling her I'm fragile? After promising to leave me?" His mouth opened, but no words came. He sank onto the couch, running a hand through his hair. "You've blown this out of proportion." "Sophie and I, we were just reminiscing." I let out a small laugh, the kind that hurts your throat. "Reminiscing? Is that what you call emotional affairs now?" He slammed his fist on the coffee table, voice rising. "You don't understand. She's from a time before everything got so complicated. Before you and I lost." He stopped himself, looking away. "Lost what?" I whispered. "Respect, love, or just your sense of loyalty?" He didn't answer. I walked around the couch, standing in front of him. My voice was steady, but my heart was pounding. "I've known for weeks, Michael. I saw the way you looked at her. I heard the song, the whispers. I found the toothbrush." His head jerked up, eyes wide. "You went through my things?" "I paid attention," I said. "Something you stopped doing years ago." For a moment, he looked like the man I once married. Ashamed, small, unsure. Then the mask slipped back on. "You wanted proof, didn't you? You always need control. You never trusted me." I laughed again, bitterly this time. "Trust? You asked your ex to stay under our roof and then met her by the fire like teenagers. Don't lecture me about trust." He rose suddenly, standing close enough for me to smell the faint scent of whiskey on his breath. "You ruined me," he hissed. I didn't flinch. "No, Michael. You ruined yourself." His face twisted, somewhere between rage and regret. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "You sent that recording." "To you," I interrupted. "And to your parents." His expression shattered. "You didn't." "I did." I stepped back, folding my arms. "Your mother always said she wanted the truth about the kind of man her son became. Now she knows." He paced the room, muttering curses under his breath. "You're vindictive. You wanted to destroy me." "I wanted you to see what I've been living with," I said softly. "The lies, the gaslighting, the way you made me doubt myself. I wanted you to feel that suffocation. For one night." He stopped pacing and looked at me, eyes glistening. "I loved you once, you know." "Maybe you did," I whispered. "But you never stopped comparing me to her. I was never Sophie in your eyes." That silence stretched between us, heavy and final. I turned away and walked toward the door. "You need to leave." His voice broke behind me. "Where am I supposed to go?" I didn't turn around. "You should have thought about that before inviting a ghost into our home." He hesitated, then grabbed his coat and keys. "You'll regret this," he said, voice low. "Maybe," I replied. "But at least I'll regret it with my eyes open." The door slammed so hard the ornaments on the tree rattled. For a long moment I stood there, listening to the quiet. My heart didn't race this time, it just steadied. I looked around at the room, gifts half opened, the fire dying down, the remnants of a Christmas that would never feel the same again. And then I saw it, his wallet, sitting on the coffee table. I picked it up, meaning to toss it aside, but something slipped out and hit the floor with a soft click. A hotel key card. I stared at it, the logo printed in gold letters I didn't recognize. My fingers tightened around the edge. So that's where he planned to go. Outside, the snow began to fall again, quiet and relentless, just like the truth that kept finding its way to me. The key card wasn't just to any hotel. It was the one where he proposed to me. The embossed gold letters on the plastic shimmered faintly under the kitchen light. The same hotel logo that once symbolized love, not deceit. My hands shook as I slipped it into my coat pocket. I didn't need to think twice. By afternoon, I was standing in that hotel's marble lobby. The same grand chandelier sparkled above, the same scent of cedar and expensive perfume. Only this time there was no ring box waiting, just the bitter taste of truth. Outside, snow drifted across the street. Sophie's car sat in the corner of the parking lot, its windshield frosted over but unmistakable. My pulse quickened. I approached the front desk with a calm I didn't feel. "Hi," I said. "I believe there's a reservation under Michael Langley." The receptionist smiled politely, tapping at her computer. "Yes, ma'am. Room 417. They've been here for a few days now. Would you like me to ring them?" My heart gave a slow, painful thud. Days. So it wasn't a single mistake. It was a plan. I swallowed the lump in my throat and managed a small, strained smile. "No, that won't be necessary," she hesitated. There's also a second room under your name, Mrs. Langley. Room 415. I froze. Under my name? Yes, ma'am. It was booked along with his. Same credit card, same dates. He'd used my name. To cover his tracks. To make it look like we were together. I thanked her and took the spare key card she offered. My fingers tightened around it until the plastic bent slightly. The elevator ride felt endless. Every floor I passed echoed with fragments of memory. His laughter, our vows, his promise that I was his forever. When the doors finally opened, I stepped out into the carpeted hallway, the air heavy with expensive silence. Room 417 was just ahead, but I stopped in front of 415, my room. The lock clicked, and I stepped inside. The air hit me like a ghost. Vanilla candles, his cologne, and then pictures. Dozens of photos of us, torn in half, scattered across the bed, some pinned to the wall, my face ripped away and replaced by Sophie's. The same pictures from our wedding, our vacations, our life, defaced, desecrated. My breath caught, rage and heartbreak colliding inside me like glass shattering. Behind me, a voice broke the silence. You weren't supposed to see this. I turned slowly. Sophie stood by the doorway, hair damp, wearing a silk robe. Her smile faltered when she saw the look in my eyes. I stepped closer. You should have known, I said, voice low but steady. I finish what others start. Her expression twisted between defiance and guilt. He said you'd never find out, that you were too busy pretending everything was perfect. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Perfect? You think living with someone who looks through you is perfect? She took a step back. You don't understand. He told me you didn't love him anymore, that you were just keeping up appearances. I tilted my head. And that made it okay? To crawl back into the life I built? To stay in my home, eat at my table, smile at my children? Her lip trembled. He said he'd leave you. Funny, I said coldly. He's been saying that for years. She opened her mouth to answer, but a sharp knock cut through the air. Hotel security. Open up! Sophie jumped, her eyes wide. 2 uniformed officers stood outside the door when I opened it, their radios crackling softly. Ma'am, we received a report of a domestic disturbance between guests, one said. I nodded calmly, stepping aside. You might want to check room 417, I said, voice even. That's where the disturbance began. The officers exchanged a look and moved past me. Moments later, I heard the door next door swing open, followed by raised voices. His voice. What's going on? Michael barked. Sir, we need you to come with us, one of the officers replied. I stepped into the hallway, watching quietly as they escorted him out, coat half on, face pale and stricken. Sophie stood frozen in the doorway behind him, tears glistening. Michael caught sight of me as they passed. Emily, please, he said, reaching out. This isn't... I didn't move. It's exactly what it looks like, I said softly. He flinched, the weight of humiliation finally settling across his shoulders as the officers led him away. For the first time in months, the air felt light. I turned back to Sophie, who looked like a ghost herself. Merry Christmas, I said quietly. I hope it was worth it. Then I walked out through the grand lobby where he once promised me forever. This time, walking away for good. He came down the stairs pale, clutching his phone like it might explode. That was Christmas morning. Now, days later, the house was silent. The wrapping paper was gone, the lights unplugged. The living room looked cleaner than it ever had, though it still carried the ghost of that morning's chaos. Snow covered the yard outside, smooth and untouched. Inside, for the first time in years, I felt the same way. Untouched, unbothered, whole. Christmas had ended with silence, and that was the best gift I ever got. The police had called once, just to confirm my statement. Yes, I said. He left willingly. They thanked me and hung up. That was it. No more explanations. No more pretending. I was finally done. I made coffee and stood by the window, watching the frost melt into glitter on the glass. The sun rose slow and golden, and I realized I'd missed this, the stillness that comes after the storm. His things were still in the closet. A suit jacket, a few shirts, the cologne he used too much of. I pulled them all down and folded them neatly into boxes. No tears, no second thoughts. Just steady hands and the quiet hum of a new beginning. By noon, I had 3 boxes lined up by the door. Donation day, I smiled. Let someone else find use in what he left behind. When I reached the mantel, I stopped. The family photo, our last Christmas together before it all went dark. I stared at it for a long moment, tracing the outlines of who we used to be. Then I placed it face down, lit a small candle, and whispered, "Rest in peace." But I wasn't talking to him. The neighborhood was quiet. Children's laughter echoed faintly from across the street, where another family built a snowman. Their joy didn't sting. It felt distant, almost soft. I'd thought this house would always be full of noise, of fights, of apologies that meant nothing. But maybe peace was meant to sound like this. Nothing at all. I checked my phone once. 57 unread messages. All from him. The last one, "Please, let's talk." I hovered over it for a second, then hit delete. The sound it made, tiny, final, felt like a door closing. No more explaining myself to someone who never listened. No more begging to be seen. The news spread quickly, of course. "Sophie fled town," a neighbor whispered when she dropped off cookies. "No forwarding address." I thanked her, accepted the cookies, and shut the door. His company released a statement 2 days later. Suspended for unethical conduct. I didn't feel joy, just peace. A strange, steady peace that filled the corners of my chest like warm light. Later that evening, I redecorated the living room, moved the furniture, replaced the curtains, filled the air with the scent of pine and orange peel. The space didn't look like ours anymore. It looked like mine. I hung new photos. My parents, a few from travels before marriage, and one of me, alone on a hilltop, wind in my hair, smiling without reason. That one went right above the fireplace, my new altar of peace. When night fell, I poured a glass of wine and sat at the table, the same one where he used to sit across from me, full of excuses. The empty chair felt like closure. Outside, snow kept falling, soft as whispers. I leaned back, letting the silence wrap around me. No guilt, no fear, just the hum of the heater, the ticking of the clock, and the rhythm of my breathing. I looked at the candle still flickering on the mantel. Its flame swayed gently, steady but alive. I raised my glass to it and whispered, "Merry Christmas," to me. For the first time in years, I meant it. Dignity isn't a gift. It's a choice. If this story moved you, subscribe for more tales of courage, betrayal, and justice.